artists, welcome to Orange Easel. I'm Allison Jensen and I'm going to talk to you today about some dangerous art that you can make with your artists at home. Anytime we add an element of danger to something, doesn't it just become just a little bit more intriguing to do? Now we do this project with our preschoolers under careful supervision and with our grade schoolers and even our teenagers who enjoy it. We're going to make these wonderful, very colorful little treasure stones using crayons. And that's it. So you're gonna need the rocks. Now I buy my rocks from the dollar store, from Dollar Tree, and they come in this bag. All of this for $1. You're gonna wanna find kind of the flat ones. Those ones work the best. That way when we're melting the wax over the top of them, the wax kind of stays where we want it to go. If you end up with one that's really pointy like this, when we put the wax on top, it just kind of runs down the side. It doesn't stay put, doesn't stick the way maybe you'd want it to. So the flat ones I find work the best. The other thing to look for if you've got young kids is a rock that isn't too wobbly, right? Because we're going to put it on a surface and they're going to try to color on it, and it's going to be hot enough that they don't want to have to stabilize it with their other hand. So when we're coloring on it with this hand, you don't want to have to stabilize it. And that's going to be their very first instinct, is to hold that rock still and color on it, and that's going to hurt their little fingers. So if you find one that's nice and flat that isn't going to move on them, that's a little bit better. Your big PIDs might be okay with one that's a little bit rocky, or you could figure out a way to brace it, either with toothpicks or dowel rods or something underneath it so that it doesn't wobble so much. All right. The other thing you're going to need other than the rocks is some sort of surface to protect your table. We are going to be melting wax over the top of these rocks. I'm just using a paper plate. Another idea would be a piece of wax paper or a piece of aluminum foil. Now, you're gonna need some crayons, which every household should have some old crayons someplace. I've peeled all the paper off of these, which I like for anything that we're gonna melt, so that if the paper is off of them, when it melts down, you're not having to peel paper back. So just go ahead and peel them all before you get started. On the dark rocks like this, the light colors look so cool. And if you had light rocks, your dark colors would provide that contrast. So this is a great way to use up some of those old crayons that you have laying around. I like the longer ones if you've got young kids. So that way their fingers are really far away from that warm stone. So I have my rock sitting here. It is warm to the touch. I put them in the oven. They go in the oven for 10 minutes maybe on 200 degrees. And then that's an adult job probably to take it out with a hot pad and set it on whatever your surface is going to be. Now, take your crayon, tell your little ones, hold very, very much by the tip, and you can set it on top of the rock. You'll see how the wax immediately... Out of the way, this is my warm one. I'm going to set it off to the side so we won't mess with that one any longer. Let me show you some that are already cooled and ready to go. So like this one here, this is a nice flat one that I made, and it is, see if we can get it to focus, the camera there. So you can see it's swirled with oranges and greens and yellows and whites, and then the back, of course, this is where it was laying on the plate, so it doesn't have any color there. And it's real smooth to the touch and almost marbled. If we were to put this out in the sun and it would get really warm, these would actually start to melt again. And I could use my fingernail and scrape it because it is a layer of wax, which isn't too durable. And this one here, let's see if we can find one. This one here has got some pretty pinks on it. This one really marbled well. It was pinks and purples and even whites on that nice dark stone. And then I have this one. This one is an orangish heart. So these are my collection of little treasure rocks that I've made, my art rocks, that would go really well in like a potted plant inside, something that's temperature controlled. Or if you had a climate that you lived in that didn't get too warm and you wouldn't have to worry about that wax melting, you could put them outside in the garden. Otherwise, they're really indoor kind of decorative rocks that the kids can make. They would be a really pretty addition to a fairy garden. So if your kids are into making fairy gardens, these would be really pretty. We did an extra step in the studio while the wax was still warm. Before the rock cooled off, we allowed our kids to sprinkle them with glitter, and that stuck right into that goopy kind of wax, and then sealed it off when it finally dried. So that made a really pretty stone for our kids. So I hope that you try these out at home with your artists, with either rocks that you find around the yard or rocks that you've purchased at a dollar store, and with some of your old crayons that you have laying around. It would be interesting to know if you could do this with rocks outside just warmed in the sun instead of using the oven. That might be something that we try to do here in our Missouri summer that we get. If you do try them, please take a picture, post it to social media, to Instagram or Facebook, and we would love to see the art that you make and be inspired by your artists as well. And as always, we hope to see you in the studio soon.